Okay, over to you, Marcin.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, and sorry for stealing the coffee break. My name is Marcin, I'm from ETH Zürich, working with Dirk, and today I would like to talk to you about the future, and in particular about the future of traffic. So let me start with a bit of a negative take. Yeah, okay, good. Let me start with a bit of a negative statement. Modernity is in crisis. So as many speakers have already mentioned, we're dealing with a climate crisis, with an energy crisis, and in many places all over the world with the economic crisis. And what's different perhaps about these problems nowadays is that they're all global and they're all complexly interconnected. So it is not really possible to address them individually. We need to address them all at the same time. And the focal point for all of these issues are the cities. So never before in history as many people as today lived in cities. And through that, cities contribute to these problems in a disproportionate way. But at the same time, they also have the potential to address them. And my belief is that we are able to address all of these problems just with addressing the traffic problem. So if we're able to improve traffic in cities all over the world, we will improve the climate situation because we will generate less pollution, we will improve the energy situation because we will require less gas, and we will affect the economy because less time is going to be wasted. And the algorithm that has been developed in our lab, we call it self-organizing traffic lights. As Dirk has already mentioned, they are driven by the cars, so it's actually the cars that are influencing the decision-making process. And what happens is basically the lights modulate the current phase and its length, so basically who gets the green light and for how long in a non-cyclic way, and they act based on the number of cars waiting on each lane. And what's also taken into account is a short-term prediction, and here it's very important, it's a short-term prediction, we're not making any long-term predictions. And what this all leads to is emergence of green waves. So a situation where drivers get consecutively green signal on subsequent intersections they cross. And this whole system is actually able to adapt dynamically to changes in traffic. So if there is any unforeseeable event, which is quite common in cities, if there is perhaps an accident or a flood, this system can adapt without any intervention. And well, perhaps it all sounds too good to be true, and as it's often the case in academia, I think we're often dealing with very theoretical issues. But in this case, this particular algorithm has been tested in real-life situations. I think Dirk mentioned Dresden, and I'm going to talk about Lucerne, where ETH actually tested this algorithm independently of our group, and it has been deployed on 2 intersections in the city of Lucerne and compared with a state-of-the-art method called VS Plus that's been deployed in many cities all over the world. And what we found out is actually the waiting time for drivers incurred under our self-control algorithm has been decreased by 8 seconds from 35 to 27, so that's around 20% improvement, I think, which is pretty good. And now if we think about Lucerne, it's actually not that big of a city in Switzerland, 80,000 people. Let's assume half of them drive daily. If each of them saves 8 seconds, it amounts to 178 hours saved a day, which is quite good, I'd say. But then if we think Bangalore, 10 million people in the urban zone, with the same assumptions we would be saving the city would be saving over 20,000 hours daily. So that's quite incredible. But then someone might say, well, but we would improve the traffic, but then in turn people would be incentivized to drive more, right? Because the traffic situation is better and then everybody wants to drive. And then we end up with the same problem again. But in this case, they actually tested how the system works with public transport, and it turns out that for the first intersection, there was a 25% reduction in waiting times and 50 on the second. So it's even better than for individual cars. And in this way, we're basically able to prioritize public transport and therefore incentivize people to use it. And then lastly, we shouldn't forget about pedestrians. Some people might not be, for any reason they have inclined to drive or use public transport. And this algorithm is actually also able to reduce their waiting times on average by 5 seconds. So what we see is that actually all groups, all participants of traffic situation is improved by the implementation of this algorithm. And now maybe let's talk a bit about why the self-control approach is so much better. So for once, it is data-driven, so it is really making these decisions based on the current situation on the road. It doesn't need data prior to its functioning, so it's not analyzing anything prior. It's just taking action based on what's happening. And because of that, it's very adaptive. So if, as I mentioned, if there is any critical situation, it is usually able to resolve the problem without any intervention. And lastly, it is also decentralized. So we're really getting away with not having any kind of overhead from intersections communicating, which for many systems is a problem. And what I think is amazing about this algorithm is that it can be developed in a city in an incremental way. So basically in Lucerne they just implemented it on 2 intersections, and there's more intersections in Lucerne than just 2. And this already proved to give us a great improvement. So actually cities can just implement this algorithm on 1 or 2 intersections, which makes it much easier to test, and then if the city sees an improvement, it can invest in more intersections of this sort. So this makes it much more accessible, and the entry cost is much lower. It does not require a huge investment. We can just start small and then scale it up. And then, to finish, I would also like to mention some future opportunities. So we believe this can be merged with a future economic system. So already many countries, many cities are implementing some form of CO2 credits. And if we think about a city which has a better traffic situation, it produces less pollution and also needs fewer credits. And this would allow potentially the city to trade these credits and benefit from that and improve their situation further. So thank you very much for your attention. My group holds the patent for this algorithm, and we would be very interested to see it work in practice. So if anybody's interested in making future better with us, just approach me in the break. Let us know. Thank you.